Along the North Bentwick Fjord, the trip goes to Vancouver Island. As we sail out to sea, more and more passengers come to the upper decks. Here, there will soon be whales to see. And indeed, we see some. Blue whales have appeared briefly. They can be over 30 meters long and up to 100 years old. Vancouver Island comes into view. In the north of the island, in Port Hardy, we moor. Around 4,000 inhabitants live in the manageable village. On the other side of the bay, where there is a hill, is our destination for today.
So, jetzt gehen wir mal woanders hin, ne? Vielleicht auch nicht. Man sieht, wie steil das hier geht. Ungefähr 60 Höhenmeter. Aber da soll ja was ganz Besonderes sein. Noch ist der Weg asphaltiert, aber es ändert sich bald.
We leave the path to the left. Small markings show the way.
Sollte man mal singen, weil hier können auch Bären sein.
From time to time you have a view over the densely wooded hills.
So, da sehen wir schon die ersten Bären, aber völlig ungefährlich.
Sometimes you don't even know exactly where to go next.
wir da lang.
Then it goes steeply downhill. To make the descent easier, ropes have been attached.
So, nun haben wir sie erreicht, die Dakota 576. 1944 bei einem Navigationsübungsflug an dieser Stelle hier abgestürzt.
At that time, several aircraft were on their way from Pat Bay for a navigational training flight. They were supposed to cover several sections of the route to Port Hardy, and then return. Despite heavy gusts and strong winds, most crews just made it back to Pat Bay. But the crew of the Dakota 576 thought they didn't have enough fuel, and decided to land in Port Hardy. Due to the bad weather, the pilot missed the first approach and tried again. He was about 5 miles away from touchdown when he ran out of fuel. The machine crashed. The nose of the plane had crashed into a large boulder, killing the pilot and the navigator. Only the radio operator survived. He was found unconscious but uninjured by a search party several hours later. The two dead were buried in Victoria. The machine remained almost untouched. Only the cockpit was recovered. The Douglas DC-3 was built over 16,000 times. To date, the highest number for a passenger and transport aircraft. The Dakota was the military version. In the Second World War, the DC-3 was used as a transporter, tow plane, ambulance aircraft, and passenger aircraft. Today, the site of the accident is a memorial site, which is visited by some adventurous and aviation enthusiasts. Our next destination is Campbell River. We also spend the night there. Then we continue to Ucluelet on the Pacific coast. On the way we pass the Discovery Passage. Many ships use the passage on their way from and to Alaska. This allows them to protect themselves from the winds in the Pacific Ocean. But the route was dangerous. Almost 120 ships were damaged here. Between the two mountains was another mountain. He was only 1 meter underwater. After many ships had crashed here, it was blown up in 1958. The debris flew up to 300 meters high.
Heute sind wir am Pacific Rim und wir werden heute eine Whale-Watching-Tour machen.
Und gestern hieß es früh aufstehen, bereits um 7 Uhr. Und dann ging es mit dem Boot zu einer Bärensafari. Und wie das geklappt hat, das zeigen wir jetzt.
Early in the morning we were in the harbor of Campbell River.
Life jackets. Please be mindful not to pull on this yellow tab.
After a short safety briefing, we went across the bay into the fjord. The outward journey was supposed to take 2.5 hours. Before the finish, we took a short break.
Would you like us just to make our own tea?
Oh my God, no! This is you guys are on holiday. I'm happy to be your.
Afterwards, our captain told us something about the bears living here. We wanted to watch them catch
They
salmon.
can be very big and very shaggy, but not as big as a grizzly, which would be probably like 2.5–3 meters when they stand on their hind legs, right? Now you said the color. The color.
The anticipation grew. It was to be one of the highlights of our trip. What will it be like to experience them up close?
Grizzly bears because of the grizzle in their fur. The reason why it's so is because there's a lot of meadows with daisies and wildflowers, so it helps them really camouflage.
After another 20 minutes, we reached our mooring. From here, the First Nation accompanied us through the national park. We reached the first viewpoint by bus, and were excited. Some salmon were cavorting upstream. Now all they have to do is come, the bears. Only now did we notice a strong fishy smell. Below we saw eaten salmon. There was nothing to see of the bears. Here we were probably too late. So off to the next viewpoint. Again we waited. Of course, you have to do that if you want to observe animals in the wild. But here, too, there was only the river with its salmon. We still had an hour and a half. So off to the next observation tower. No bears here either. Today we are probably unlucky. And we were on the road for a whole day. There was still time for another location. On the way there, someone suddenly shouted, "Bears!" And indeed, we discovered 2 bears in the thicket of the forest. They were probably on their way to the river. We asked the guide if we were going there now. The answer in a nutshell, no. It goes back, although we still had 20 minutes to spare. That's it for just under €500 per person. Too bad, the guides broke off earlier. Unfortunately, it wasn't worth it for this price. A bear stands in front of a motel in Ucluelet. The name of the place is derived from the term for a safe haven, from the language of the Indian population. Originally, the population here also lived from fishing. Today, whale watching tours and hikes through the jungles are offered. We will now do both. First we drive to the village further north, Tofino. This is where our whale watching starts.
Very disappointing, I know, but there is a backup plan. You open up the Velcro on both sides of your vest.
After a short time, some orcas appear in the bay. We follow the animals out to sea at a sufficiently large distance. Then we watch, as the coastal landscape disappears in the fog. A humpback whale seems to be curious, but it quickly disappears again. As the fog is getting heavier, our skipper decides to go to another place. Suddenly and completely unexpectedly, another humpback whale appears. We had never seen him so close. Now the fog is getting heavier here as well, so the captain decides to drive back. Our whale watching time is almost over anyway, so it doesn't make sense anymore. It would have been ideal if we had come here by mid-August, but it was still good. Here in the Pacific Rim National Park, the weather is often rough and stormy. There is a long sandy beach. It is in the fog, but can only be guessed at. You should watch out for the dangerous underwater currents that can be here. Our hotel is located on a lake. Here you can paddle boat, and also swim. So it's a good place to relax when the weather cooperates. Our journey continues. First we take the same way we took on the way there. We had already noticed a forest parking lot. This time we will make a stop here, before we will continue to Victoria. Here we still see a part of the temperate rainforest that used to cover almost the entire country. The red cedars are up to 800 years old. The hike leads 500 meters over a wooden plank path and takes about 30 minutes. A rich variety of ferns and mosses form carpets on the forest floor. After a good 4 hours of travel we reach Victoria, capital of the Canadian province of British Columbia. The name goes back to Queen Victoria. Today, the city has around 90,000 inhabitants. From a trading post for furs, the city emerged, which is still on Indian territory today. It was not until 2006 that at least the land on which the Parliament building stands was bought from the Indians. In the park around it there are numerous sculptures and monuments. The totem pole of knowledge was carved by a Coast Salish artist. It was originally created for the Commonwealth Games in 1994. Almost 100 years earlier, the Parliament building was opened. The last alarm. The monument commemorates injured firefighters who gave their lives in the service of their citizens. Bronze animals adorn the Victoria Century Fountain, which can be found on the south side of the building. It shows the 4 colonies and territories that formed British Columbia. A monument shows it exactly. For over 150 years, Canada has consisted of 13 provinces and territories. Directly in front of the monument, carriages are waiting for a possible city tour. But in this weather, they probably wait a long time. Only a few people are out and about. Opposite is the inner harbor. This is also where the water taxis that connect the neighboring districts depart. One of the oldest hotels in the city, the Fairmont Empress, is located right on the promenade. A water taxi approaches Fisherman's Wharf. It was once a fishing hotspot. Its heyday began at the end of the Second World War and ended at the beginning of the 1990s. Salmon and tuna fishermen, but also fur seal hunters were at home in Fisherman's Wharf. Today a place to linger. At the food stalls you can taste fresh fish and chips. The next day we leave Victoria.